arm to where we're pursuing from, we want to use what we call a hammer and rake. And we want to be more violent than what you're seeing here. Secure the tackle with the left arm, come over the top and be violent with the right arm. Hammer the ball and rake out, rotating your hips, trying to be violent and pulling the ball out, separating the ball from the body and causing a fumble. The person behind these guys in the drill is ultimately going to then become the scoop and score player, bending their knees, looking the ball into the tuck. Those players need to be more violent there. We need to have the ball in the near arm. That's a good job by 29 there. Be violent, hammer, and rake the ball out. Again, I'd prefer the ball be in the near arm when we utilize this technique. Look the ball into the tuck the ball away high and tight, secure the football and bring it back. That's a little bit better. Bend the knees, be athletic. Once we're done with this, we go on to a ball in the far arm drill. We call this rip and punch. The first thing that we want to have happen is we want to secure the tackle. You see 45 secure the tackle, in this case with his right arm. And what I want him to do with that left arm then is go hug the hip of the ball carrier and punch up with a violent uppercut. Punching at the point of the football right there. At times for the guys doing it lefty, it can be a little bit awkward, but we want to punch up at the ball right there. Punching at the point of the ball, separating the ball from the body, finishing the drill with a good scoop and score. Good secure the tackle, punch the ball out, bend your knees, scoop and score. Got to do a better job securing the tackle on that one. Secure the tackle, punch it out. And even if you only separate the ball from the body, as the case here, maybe someone else coming in can end up stripping the ball. So you got to be opportunistic. We got to take the ball away. 35, secure the tackle. There you go. Come with a violent uppercut right there. Bend your knees, look the ball into the tuck, put it away and score. Put it away and score. Go from defense to offense in a hurry. It's a little bit better. Find the ball, look it into the tuck. Go score. Okay, now the ball's in the right arm. He'll secure the tackle with the left arm. I like the effort there. The execution, the technique isn't very solid. Secure the tackle with the left arm. Arm over, arm around. And then you want to go hip to hip. You got to go hip to hip with them. And you want to punch up. The second one's good. The first one not so good. Violent uppercut, separating the ball from the body. There you go. Much better with the right arm than the left arm. Bend your knees, look it into the tuck, bring it back. There you go. Be violent, look it into the tuck. Secure the tackle. Be more violent. Throw right up. You want to bite your bicep on this drill is what I tell them. Bite their bicep. All right, the next phase of the drill is what we call pin and pry. It's when you're executing a 2-on-1 tackle. The ball carriers have the ball in their right arm in this drill. So for the drill's sake, the individual on the right is securing the tackle here. The individual on the ball carrier's left, on the ball carrier's left, on the defense's right, is securing the tackle. It's a 2-on-1 tackle like we did in the tackling circuit, where they're tackling halves of the ball carrier. The individual on the right of the defensive players is securing the tackle. The individual on the left then secures the tackle, tackles that half of the ball carrier, that breastplate of the ball carrier, and as he goes to do that, he pins with his outside arm the elbow of the ball carrier, and he pries the ball loose. The only thing I'd like to see these guys do a little bit better is rotate their hips and twist the ball out. A ball carrier will not allow the ball to be taken away that easily. We want to pry the football out. Dig your butt in there, get the ball out, and rotate your hips and scoop and score. Not a very good job there. Not a very good job there either. Good job by 29 there. That's better. Bend your knees. Look it all the way into the tuck. Now the ball's in the other arm. All right, the final piece of our ball disruption circuit is scoop and score. So we've worked on stripping it. Now we're working on scoop and scoring. There's two ways that we coach scoop and scoring. One is when the ball's rolling end over end, and we call that hedge your bets. Play the odds that the ball is going to give you the big hop, like that. Look the ball into the tuck. Put the ball in the outside arm, high and tight, high and tight, high and tight. Run through it. Keep running through it. It will eventually give you the big hop. That's the odd shape of the football. It will give you the big hop. There you go. Scoop it up, bring it back, score a touchdown. Put the ball in the outside arm, high and tight, protection, ball security, ball security. Look it into the tuck. Good job there. Good job there. Look it into the tuck. The second portion of the drill then is when the ball's rolling on its bladder. So you can see the ball roll here now, flat on its bladder. Now, like an infielder in baseball, it's your responsibility to kind of gear down, palms to the sky, not like that. Get your hands out in front of you. Get your hands out in front of you with your palms to the sky and your fingertips right there. Look the ball into the tuck. Neither of those guys were very good. One fell down, one kicked it. Knees bent. There you go. Look it into the tuck. Look it all the way into the tuck like a wide receiver would. Look it all the way into the tuck. Put the ball in the far out, in the outside arm, and then protect the ball high and tight. Good ball security. One of the drills that we utilize during the course of practice is a pursuit drill, is what we call the hunt drill. And in the hunt drill, what I'll do is I'll get the group aligned as a defense, check their alignment, check their stance, relative to a formation that we'll give them. And then I'll drop back to pass. I want to hear everybody yell pass. Everybody's responsibility is to take their drop within the framework of the call. The front guys, or if we're blitzing, are responsible for rushing the passer in a coordinated effort. Once I throw the ball, I want to hear everybody yell ball. And when the ball's in the air, the key to our success at defending the pass is everybody turning and running to the football. As they turn and run to the football then, when we intercept the ball, we'll yell bingo. And we go from offense or defense to offense in a hurry. The nearest defensive back, his responsibility is to block the intended receiver. And then we tell all four linemen they are responsible for the quarterback. It's their job to take care of the quarterback. On this drill, we block players high and in front, and we create a wall, bringing the ball back for a touchdown. The drill that you're actually watching, we usually do this drill to start a practice. The drill you're actually watching right here is in the middle of a practice, and you can see sometimes, the corners are a part of another period of practice right here, so we have some corners running it and some not. So in the particular one that you're watching here, we're running a corner blitz with a twist. We're playing a 3-deep, 3-under concept. As the ball's snapped, everybody yells pass. Ball in flight, everybody takes their drop, they yell ball. And once the ball is intercepted, we yell bingo, catching the ball at the highest point, looking it into the tuck, protecting the ball, holding it high and tight in the outside arm. And then all the D linemen are responsible for the quarterback, the nearest defensive back's responsible for blocking the intended receiver, and everybody else creates a wall at the near numbers so that we can return the ball for a touchdown. Once they complete the drill, they huddle up in the back, they break it down, and the next group steps up into the particular drill. So here we go, running the exact same corner blitz. The guys are dropping into coverage. We have no corner to the field in the drill here. And as the ball's thrown then, we intercept the ball. Once the ball's intercepted, again, we yell pass when the ball's in flight. When we intercept the ball, we yell pass when we drop back. We yell ball when the ball's in flight. And when the ball's caught, everybody yells bingo. And when we yell bingo, we go from defense to offense. In this particular one here, the free safety, who's playing what we call hot to third, doesn't do a great job. He just works the hot and then doesn't backpedal into an outside third right there relative to the corner blitz. The ball ends up being thrown over his head. Now we want him to go pick up the ball even if it's not caught. We try to teach scoop and score mechanics right there. Bending your knees, looking the ball into the tuck, and bringing the ball back to score a touchdown.
Okay, we're going to talk about playing an outside third. Again, with all our techniques, we like to break them up into segments. First, we'll talk to the kids about alignment, stance, their eyes, their pedal, cushion, break, and finally the finish. Okay, as far as playing an outside third, again, we'll start with the alignment. We'll start with the corner down here at the bottom. His alignment, initially, we'd like it to be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard outside the number one receiver. But there are some things that will determine whether he'll line up inside or outside. Ideally, we like him to line up outside, but we'll give him rules to determine whether he'll line up inside or outside that number one receiver. And the rules that we give him is determined by what we call dividers. So if the ball's on the hash as it is here, it's on the right hash as the defensive right hash. So now our divider to the right into the boundary would actually be the numbers. So this wide receiver into the boundary is actually lined up outside our divider, which is the numbers. So we'd like that corner to be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard inside. Now we look to the field, which is to the defensive left. The divider now for the field is going to be a little different from the boundary because the ball's on the hash. The divider to the field is actually going to be halfway between the numbers and the hash. So right now, this wide receiver, as the defense looking from the defense perspective, that's lined up to the left, he's actually outside the divider point. So we'll want that corner to actually line up 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard inside. And both corners playing their third, they will be responsible for playing their third, but they'll be keying 2 as they play their third. And if two goes vertical in their third, if both guys go vertical, both corners will be responsible for overlapping and splitting the difference between those 2 receivers, and they'll favor that number 2 receiver. And we do this to help that free safety out. So if we do get the 4 vertical, we're going to try to midpoint most of these routes and try to help that free safety as he plays the middle of the field. And we do this by telling the corners that their third exists from the sidelines to about 1 yard inside the hash. So as they split the difference on that 2 vertical, they got to make sure they favor that number two receiver. On this particular route, we'll start down here at the bottom. Again, with our stance, with our alignment, we've already talked about our alignment, and now our stance is going to be shoulder width apart. We're always going to have our inside foot back. We're going to have the weight on the balls of our feet, slight ankle bend, slight knee bend. And again, we're going to have our weight slightly forward. We want to have our chest out over our feet, eyes up, and hands ready to pedal. And as we take our first step, we're always going to step with that inside foot first. So the weight will distribute to the outside foot, and we'll start our pedal with that inside foot. Again, our eyes for the corner, our guys will be back inside, and he'll be reading through the 3-step. And then now, if it's not 3-step, then he'll continue to pedal, and he'll be reading 2 to see if he needs to overlap. Because again, if it is any type of quick game, he should get some underneath help by any of the invert players. Here on this particular play, we'll start down here at the bottom. Receiver comes out, the corner. It's a nice job with his stance, his start, his pedal. If the receiver proceeds to break his cushion, he'll be ready to open up and split the difference. Again, we get a quick route. We get pretty much a quick route here, but the corner's not able to absolutely break on it because there's still a threat of number 2 going vertical. So the corner chooses to get ready to zone off. And again, if this ball is thrown, he'll be ready to side plant and come back to the ball. And again, if this ball is thrown quick, even with the threat of number 2 going vertical, the corner should get some help by the underneath safety, or here it'll be our safety, but it could be a backer depending on which way the formation is. And the safety does a nice job of playing the curl flat and reading the quarterback drop and seeing the hitch on the outside, which the corner should be communicating with, and them telling him, that there's a possibility or that there is a hitch, which allow him to expand to the flat, and the corner will actually be over the top of this route. Okay, initially, we'll start down here at the bottom. The ball's on the hash, so our divider point will still be the numbers. We've got a wide split by 1 to our right, so the corner should be lined up inside, same depth. Again, up top, we've got a wide split by 1, so the corner should actually be lined up inside, which he is. Corner up top has actually a 2 and a 3 threat, so if any one of those guys go vertical, he's got to be ready to overlap. We'll start with the corner at the top. He takes his pedal, and again, as he works out, he's going to make sure he zones that thing off, and he's over the top of anything in his third. So we tell him he needs to be 2 to 3 yards over the top of anything any vertical that occurs in his third. Right now, he's got 1 going vertical up top. He's got 2 going vertical up top, so he'll need to split the difference. So right now, the corner does a great job of weaving and splitting the difference between 1 and 2, and he's going to favor 2, which he does. And he does a great job of zoning off, still keeping the scope of the quarterback, balls thrown, does a nice job of breaking the upfield shoulder on the route, and he does a nice job of finishing here. Down at the bottom, corner's only got 1 threat, so he's inside. This third can be played one of 2 ways, which people do it different. With them only having the threat of 1, some people like to actually play this third more like a man technique, and the only difference would be if it's played with a man technique, he can make a man turn here on any vertical route. If you prefer him to play zone on the backside with just 1 wide out, then once the receiver breaks his cushion here, he'll actually zone turn this. So there's probably room for either way, because even with one receiver on the backside and you have 3 quicks to the front side, that number 3 to the front side still could cross the formation and come back into the boundary corner's third. So if that is a threat of it, we would like him to zone turn and still see his whole third. Again, pre-snap is going to determine where we line up. The corner into the boundary with the ball on the hash. His divider is the numbers. Receivers lined up inside the numbers, so now the corner can be 7 to 8 yards deep, 1 yard outside. At the top, the corner actually has his wide out right there just inside the divider, so he's playing outside, 1 yard outside, but he still has a 2 threat, so he has to be aware of it. If you get the verticals, he's still got to be ready to overlap the 2. Starting down here at the bottom, with 1 wide out to his side, the corners down here still has a 3rd, but he can be a little more aggressive playing his 3rd, knowing he still has some underneath help by the backer who's going to widen. So right now the corner does a great job of reading and filling the quarterback drop and filling the route. Good job on the transition, driving on the route. Corner up top, he now has the threat of 2 going vertical. Initially, the underneath backer does a great job of collisioning, but the receiver is still climbing vertical, so he'll need the zoning off, get inside of 1, and be ready to be over the top of 2. Okay, off man. Again, we'll like to break it down into segments. When we talk about off man, we'll talk first about alignment on the wide receiver, and then we'll go to stance, then we'll talk about eyes, talk about their pedal, then we'll talk about cushion and also the leverage, and then we'll talk about break, and then again, the last thing we'll always talk to them is about finishing. Okay, as far as the alignment, our alignment here is when we're playing off man, we like to have inside leverage. So the defensive back will line him up at 6 to 7 yards deep. He'll be 1 yard inside the wide receiver that he's covering. And we line them up inside is because we like to try to protect the easy throw. We want them to keep inside leverage and try to protect the easy throw and try to make them throw the ball outside. We just think throwing the ball inside is a high percentage throw. If they throw it outside, it's a lower percentage throw, and that's why we want to try to force them to throw the ball. That's why we encourage the guys to play off man with inside leverage. As far as his stance, it's going to be shoulder width apart, okay, which we have here. Again, we'll have a good heel-toe relationship with inside foot back, slight bend at the knees, at the waist. Again, we'll have the weight slightly forward to the balls of our feet, and then we'll have our chest out over our feet, eyes up. Now, as far as our eyes, initially before the ball snap, it could be done one of 2 ways, to where the defensive back totally focuses on the receiver, or you can read through the 3-step, which we encourage our guys to do here. And that means the eyes of the corner will actually be on the quarterback, and he'll be looking to read to see if it's a 3-step drop or a 5-step drop. If he gets a 3-step drop, he'll know he can settle and come to a control pedal, be ready to drive on any of the short underneath routes. If the quarterback gives him a 5-step drop, now he knows that he can continue in his pedal and ready to play the deeper routes according to the quarterback's drop. So he has a great alignment, great stance. His eyes have to be in the right place too, and not only on the 3-step, 5-step. Once he reads 3-step, his eyes will go back to the number 1 receiver. And as soon as that quarterback clears the 3-step drop, now his eyes will go back to the wide out, and now it'll be focused right there on the inside hip of that wide out. The next thing we'll talk about is also the pedal. So you'll see as we start, his eyes will be inside. Right now, we actually get a 5-step drop. So now, once that quarterback clears the 3-step, now the defensive back eye should immediately pop back to the number 1 receiver, the receiver that he's covering. Again, we talk about eyes. His eyes will be focused on the inside hip of that wide receiver. The next thing we'll talk about is the pedal. Okay, his pedal, he needs to have a good start. His weight will transfer to that right foot. He'll be stepping with his left foot first. And again, his first couple steps will be slow with the read because he's reading through the 3-step. Once the quarterback goes to the 3-step, he'll pick his pedal up, and now he'll try to keep as much cushion and leverage as he possibly can. The cushion, when we talk about cushion, we like to make sure that we'll open up on that wide receiver. If he threatens me within about 2 to 3 yards, I got to make sure that I open up and stay over the top of the route. As far as cushion, I want to keep my 1 yard inside leverage on the wide receiver, keeping my advantage to try to make the ball be thrown outside. Here, in this situation here, defensive back does a great job. Once he breaks his cushion, he feels threatened in that 2 to 3 yard area. His eyes are still focused on the inside hip, on the hip of that wide out. And the reason we focus on the hips, because when that wide out decides to break those hips down, we have a good indicator that he's about to break the route off. Here, hips come down. Now we've got to be ready to throttle down and match the steps of the wide out, which the defensive back does here. Hips break down, R's break down, we plant, drive, back to the ball. And again, it's all about the finish. Once we plant, drive, we got to put ourselves in a good position to finish. As we plant and drive, we want to make sure we drive to that upfield shoulder. Defensive back here is probably just a tad inside, needs to be a little more outside shoulder here. So once that ball comes, he'll be ready to anchor, and shoot here to get that ball out. See the back leverage here. Again, good stance. Good stance. His eyes are back at the quarterback. Again, you'll see a good idea of where his eyes should be. Good stance, good start. As soon as he reads through the 3 steps, his eyes pop back to the number 1 receiver. The receiver tries to stem him up and get vertical. He does a nice job of staying inside. Receiver breaks his cushion, opens. His hips drop. He sees the hips drop. Plant, drive. Okay, again, good stance, good start. As you can see, his helmet is looking back inside. As soon as the quarterback goes through the 3-step, eyes go back to the wideouts, doing a great job of keeping his leverage, does a great job of keeping his cushion, good job in transition. Once I turn over, I want to plant that inside foot, and then my outside foot as it goes, I want to make sure I get that lead step in the ground as quick as I can, and now he straight lines it to keep his leverage and keep his cushion. Now, once he sees it's a vertical route, he'll keep his eyes on the wide out. Now, once the wide out progresses through that 15-yard area, now my eyes can not only be low, they can actually come high to find the ball. He's in position, he's in phase, locking that hip. Now he's going to look up, not back, to find the ball, get it out. See it here? Again, eyes, good, nice job of weaving to keep his leverage. Opens up, nice job, and now he's want to squeeze, lock the hip, find the ball. And again, he wants to look up, not back, and find that ball. Good stance, good start. Okay, now this is a good example of him keeping his vision in the right place. Good stance, good start. His eyes are low, sees the hips of the wideout break down. Hip wideout does a great job of selling it here. But again, once he drives and breaks, he wants to drive and break on that upfield shoulder. As he drives to break on that upfield shoulder, the receiver actually gives him a double move here. And because he didn't break underneath the route and breaks to the outside shoulder, he puts himself in great position to play the out and up, which he does here. And again, the only thing he wants to do is try to make sure he locks hip with that receiver. Still has a little bit of separation here. Probably like to cut down that air a little more and squeeze that receiver outside the fade line to the sidelines and give him as less room as possible to catch the ball. Nice job there. Good job with the footwork. Nice job on the plant and break. He keeps everything within the framework of his body. Plant, drive. Great job with his vision. Great job there. Once he's in phase, he can look and find the ball. He's as much of a receiver, as much as his ball as the receiver's ball once that ball's in the air. Again, like I said from the other view, the only thing I would like him see him do here is cut down that space, cut down that air between him and the wideout, because he's still giving the wideout a little room to catch the ball. He like to go lock that hip, squeeze, and squeeze that receiver to the sidelines. Okay, nice job here reading through the 3-step. good with that nice read step here. Eyes go back to the wide out. Probably goes back to the wide out a little bit quick here, but we feel the 3-step, plant, drive on the route. Great job of cutting it off. Probably here with leverage, probably like to be a little bit more inside than he is. But the thing that he does, he makes up for it with his weave initially as the ball is snapped. Great vision. Eyes go there. Again, once he gets in position, he can look back, find the ball. Great job there. Press man. Again, as we did the other techniques, we'll break it down into segments. We'll first talk about alignment on the wide receiver, stance, his eyes, mirroring the route, the jam, his angle kick, and again, the most important thing, the finish. Okay, we'll start with alignment. Here at Vanderbilt, we like to play with more of an inside leverage on our press technique. And again, it's not necessarily, you can play it however you want. We just prefer more of an inside technique here, again, because we like to protect the easy throw. So we like to try to take away that inside leverage as much as we possibly can. So alignment is going to be just a shade inside of the wide receiver. And you want to be about one to 2 yards deep on the wide out, and it'll be 1 to 2 depending on if the receiver's on or off the ball. So if he's on the ball, we want to be within about 1 yard of him. If he's off the ball, we want to be within about 2 yards of him if you possibly can. So if he's off the ball, we want to try to squeeze that line of scrimmage as much as we possibly can with our press alignment. Our stance, and as opposed to being an off man and press man, we're going to level our stance out. We're still going to be shoulder width apart. We're going to have the weight slightly to the balls of our feet, slight knee bend, slight bend at the knees, slight bend at the ankles. We'll be bent at the waist, again, making sure we got that nice flat back, have our hands up, eyes up, and our eyes are going to be focused on the inside hip of the wide receiver. Okay, here we've got the good stance, good start. Now, after we talk about the alignment, the stance, the eyes, now we want to talk about mirroring the route, okay? When we talk about mirroring the route, we want to put ourselves in a position to stay in a frontal position on the wide out as much as we possibly can. So whichever way that wide out decides to release, we want to mirror his release by staying square and sliding with him as much as we possibly can to keep that frontal position as long as we possibly can. Now, once we mirror the route, then we want to make sure we get our hands on him, which is going to be a jam, okay? If the receiver releases through the cylinder, we want to get a 2-hand jam on him and try to keep our frontal position. Now, once that receiver releases outside our cylinder, which is about 1 yard or 2 outside of us, which is about 2 to 3 yards outside of us, 2 to 3 yards outside of us, now it becomes a 1-hand jam. So if he releases within the cylinder where we can get to him, it'll be a 2-hand jam. If he releases outside of the cylinder, it'll become a 1-hand inside hand jam. And as we go, I'll demonstrate both of those. And in order to get the 2-hand jam, we'll want to make sure we got a nice base. And if we get the 1-hand jam, we want to make sure we take a good angle kick, an inside hand, and run with the wide out. Okay, on this particular release, he releases through the cylinder somewhat. So the defensive back decides to 2-hand jam him. Okay, the only thing I don't like about this particular release, as he's waiting, anticipating the release of the wide receiver, the only thing he does wrong here is he widens his base just a little too much. We like to stay within the framework of our body, so now we can slide and mirror the route. As that route works back inside, he wants to slide and run with it. But here he has a little trouble sliding with his feet, because anytime we're playing press man, your feet are going to do most of the work. That's how you're going to cover the guy. We get a little bit of a wide base here, which is one of the ones I want to show first, because a lot of times this is the mistake guys make. They widen their base. So now they have trouble mirroring the route. So when he can't mirror the route because he can't really slide here. So as he slides, he would like to lead with that left foot as that receiver works inside. He can't really lead with that left foot. He gets into more of a crossover position, which I don't want the guys to do, and we constantly talk about. And we say crossover, that means he's leading with that right foot first, crossing over the left foot, which puts him in more of a trail position. but because he's really good with his hands here, he doesn't get as much as a trail position as he normally would on a receiver that gets a quality release. But now he two-hand jams him. Now once he gets outside the framework of my body, I want to always drop. I always want to drop that outside hand. So on this inside release, he wants to drop his left hand, which he does here, and now I want to squeeze and flatten that inside right out. I want to try to flatten that receiver back to the line of scrimmage as much as I possibly can. Okay, we can see it from the back. Again, he widens his base a little too much, and you can really see it here, so he'll want to slide. Again, you can see the crossover step here, which we don't really want. We want to always lead. Whichever way that receiver decides to release, we want to lead with that near foot. But again, the finish is pretty good, which is number 7, always number 7 on the list, the results. Okay, we got to start with a good stance, good start. Okay, receiver gives him a little shake. The only thing I don't like is initially his feet are good, but now once he gets to collision, he gets his base a little bit wide. Alignment's good, stance is good, his eyes are good, they're in the right place. Now we want to mirror the route. Okay, as we mirror the route, he releases outside. Okay, initially he was close enough to where he was in the framework once I bring my hands on the jam, so it becomes a two-hand jam. Once he gets outside my framework, it becomes a one-hand jam. So now he wants to drop that outside hand and he'll collision him with his left hand. Once he collisions, he'll be shooting. His aiming point will be shooting for the inside breastplate to the tip of the shoulder pad. And as I shoot, I want to make sure I got my thumbs up so I can lock him out and control the wide out. As the receiver releases outside, what we want to do is now we want to work our angle kick. And again, as we angle kick, we want to just open up at a slight 45 as he releases outside my framework. And we want to be a slight 45 because we want to make sure we keep our frontal position on the receiver as long as we possibly can. So that's why we just call it a slight angle kick to make that receiver go around. Anytime we're pressing, we always want to make the receiver go around us, whether it be an inside release or an outside release. So we're going to use a two-hand jam if he's through the cylinder. If he releases outside, we're going to use our angle kick to keep our frontal position as long as we can. Now, once he gets out of there, we want to make sure we squeeze him to the sidelines. Now we're going to cut him off, lock the hip, find the ball. See release here. Base gets a little bit wide. Everything else is pretty good. Probably a little bit early with the two-hand jam because he's getting a little bit of a lunge position here. You like him to be have his feet up under him a little bit more. Again, the jam needs to be just a little bit more aggressive, but it's not bad. Now, when he's in the framework, he decides to two-hand jam him. Now, once he gets outside the framework of his body, he drops that outside hand, which he does. The only thing I don't like is he pushes him away, creating that air. He needs to cut that air down a little bit quicker. So again, instead of pushing him away, he wants to use his feet a little more, get his feet hot, and drive more towards the receiver so he doesn't create that space. Okay, good stance, good start, slightly inside. Receiver starts to come off vertical here. So right now, he's in a position to use the two-hand jam because the receiver releases within the cylinder. Again, those hands want to be inside, thumbs up, wants to keep his base. Again, as we anticipate the release of receiver, we got to make sure our feet are on the ground and we're really stout because once you start playing against some of the bigger receivers, they will try to come off vertical. We got to be ready and have our hands ready and be ready to shoot with our two-hand jam inside the cylinder. We'll see this one from the back. He does a decent job. Again, the feet are probably just a little bit wide. And again, even with the hands, I like him to still have his thumbs up. His thumbs are actually down, which will allow his elbows to bend. He doesn't get enough shock with that initial punch on the two-hand jam. And again, as defensive backs, we want to always deliver the blow, don't take the blow. And I think he's taking a little bit of this and probably could deliver a little bit more. Now, once he releases, we probably like to see him stay a little bit square. Now, squeeze that route. And he probably could have flattened this route a little more if he keeps the shoulder square. He opens the gate a little bit there inside, which allows the receiver to get inside, but he does a nice job of squeezing, keeping his feet hot. And again, the technique wasn't great, but again, number 7, which is number 7 on the list, he always got to finish. He does a great job of anchoring and shooting that right hand to get the ball out. Again, great finish. Okay, good stance, good start. Again, everything looks pretty good. He decides a little bit of a false step here, but he decides to scooch a little bit off of him. He gets the vertical release. He's got to make sure he keeps his weight forward. Again, he does a nice job of shooting his hands, controlling the route. Again, we don't want to necessarily push him away. We want to always cut that air down as much as we possibly can. The best thing he does is he makes sure on his angle kick, he leads with that right foot. So he still keeps a pretty good frontal position. So the receiver has to run around him. Once he gets to a point where we got to release him, now we got to run with him, squeeze him, lock the hip, and try to work him off the fade line out of bounds, which we do here. Okay, the first technique we're going to talk about is the squat technique, or some people refer to it as the jam technique in our cover two defense. And when we talk about squat technique, what I like to do is try to break them down in our techniques down into 7 categories. We'll talk about first the alignment, the stance, the eyes, which get a lot of guys in trouble more so than their footwork, the glide technique, the collision, and then we'll talk about pivot and pop and flattening, which are 2 techniques we use after you get a collision. And then, of course, the most important, we need to be able to finish. The first one we'll have here is we'll talk about the stance part of it. With stance, we want to make sure we've got our feet shoulder width apart, make sure we're staying within the framework of our body. Again, our weight will be distributed over the balls of our feet. Again, we'll have a slight bend at the knees, a slight bend at the ankles, the knees, and our chest out over the front of our body. And again, we'll have our hands up and we'll have our eyes up, ready to get a collision. In our particular defense, we'll actually start deep and sometimes taxi down to where alignment-wise will be just slightly outside of the number 1 receiver, and will be anywhere from 5 to 7 yards deep, depending on that distance. As far as depth, will fluctuate from game to game. Now, as far as the first thing, we already talked about the alignment. We talked about the stance. Now the other thing is our eyes. Okay, initially, in our jam technique, our eyes will be back inside. We're reading in man on the line of scrimmage. And then once we read run or pass from the in man on the line of scrimmage, now our eyes go back to the number 1 receiver who we're responsible for collisioning. And our eyes are going to be focused on the belt line of that receiver's. And that's where we want to keep our eyes focused to get the best collision we possibly can. Now, once we establish the alignment, the assignment, once the receiver releases and we want our eyes right there on that hip, now we'll work our glide technique to make sure we keep as much frontal position on the wide out as we possibly can. Ideally, we like to keep an outside-in relationship to collision the receiver back inside, but it's not always possible to keep an outside-in position on the wide out, just because when they try to release, they could get us in a position that's not outside in. But the most important thing is to make sure we continue to keep as much frontal position on them so we can get a collision. So now here you see him working the glide technique. Receivers